how are we all feeling about Brexit? Well, I mean, we picked a great week to do these, didn't we, English UK? Because by the time we get to Edinburgh on Friday, everything could have changed. So I like to say a little bit about how I'm feeling about what's going on at the moment. So this has been my mood a few times over the last 3 years. It's kind of gone on pondering, and I'm here today with just don't know anymore, because we don't, yeah? But the reason why I'm here is because the government told organisations to get no-deal Brexit ready. So when I was doing these presentations for another organisation that just finished last week, I have got to the stage of I am sick of hearing my own voice, and I've got limited gags left. So just we'll get through this as best we can. I've been saying to everybody, if we prepare for a no-deal scenario, we're preparing for the worst-case scenario, and anything else can just be better. And when I left the office on Friday, I kind of did a slide. I did a tweet for the English UK events, and we were running some seminars, which we were going to send some information out this week. So I did 2 sets of blurbs, one with the deal going through and one with the deal not going through. I had no idea Saturday would happen in the way it did. So, it's kind of having really no idea anymore. But one thing that we do know is if, and I'm going to say this to set the tone, if the UK leaves the EU, okay, we do know what happens in relation to people under a deal or no deal scenario, because that has been set out. And those are some of the things that we need to follow through to the end of my presentation, to just remember, in a deal scenario, this will happen. In a no-deal scenario, this will happen. Now, please, no one in the audience, I had this a few days ago where someone then said to me, but what happens if we don't leave, and what if it's a Norway-style arrangement, etc. It's like, let's focus on if we leave, and we leave broadly speaking under the terms of what this government say they want, this is what will happen in a deal scenario, and this will happen in a no-deal scenario. So that's me sort of setting the scene. What am I going to cover today? I'm going to give an immigration Brexit update, EU settlement scheme, proposed post-Brexit immigration system, a bit of planning, what schools need to do. I'm going to speak a little bit about European health insurance cards and teaching qualifications. They're not my practice areas, so I'm just giving you information. Now, I know English UK also asked me to give a little bit of information about data and GDPR. I've been wrangling with my corporate and commercial lawyers for the last week, and they basically said it's too much of a complex area. We will send a fact sheet to English UK to send over, because it's just every question that's been asked by members so far, it's not a straightforward question. So I'm basically not going to go there today. Right, so Brexit, where are we now? So I love BBC because I've literally got every Brexit diagram saved, I think, over the last 2 years. This was the one as of yesterday. This may all fall away today, or this chart may take us through till Friday. We don't know. So apologies, did you cover this morning? Nope, okay. So yesterday, the Speaker rules out the meaningful vote. Withdrawal agreement has been introduced. If that fails, or the bill is withdrawn after an amendment, then we're in the situation of, does the EU agree the extension? Because Boris did send the letter on Saturday. There's a lot of contention about the way he sent the letter, but the point is that he did send the letter. So if the EU agree for an extension, we get a Brexit delay. We could get an election, we could get a referendum, we could get renegotiation. If the EU refuse the agreement, refuse the extension, then we leave on the 31st of October. That date is coming. How many days left? Yes, 8 working days. If the withdrawal agreement is passed, and it's passed with no major amendments, then we leave the EU on the 31st of October with a Brexit deal. If it's passed with no major amendments soon after the 31st of October, then Brexit with a delay. So it won't happen on the 31st of October. It will happen sometime afterwards. But for the moment, we're going with the dates, the 31st of October, because that follows through in the stuff that I'm going to say about people, subject, obviously, to those dates changing. But as of today, we don't know. And as of today, the date is still the 31st of October. Okay? Everybody with me? Yeah? Good. Right, so immigration, Brexit update, the current government, and you'll understand in a few minutes why I say current government. Okay, so what we have been told is freedom of movement as we know it is set to end if we leave the EU. The rights of EU citizens already in the UK have been guaranteed by the government. Post-Brexit, EU national status will depend on deal or no deal, i.e. when they come in and whether they will transition onto settled status, i.e. being allowed to stay in the country, or whether they'll have a temporary status, depends on whether we leave with a deal or no deal. I should say these slides will be sent to English UK today, so they can send them over to everybody. Right, so this is a snapshot of what happens with EU nationals in a deal versus no deal scenario. So we're going to talk about the deal bit first, because we're all optimistic that there is going to be a deal. So EU nationals, that's your employees and your students, will need to be resident by the 31st of December 2020. So freedom of movement effectively continues. So if we leave on the 31st of October or a date soon after, freedom of movement effectively continues until the 31st of December 2020. The Home Office have launched an EU settlement scheme. I'll talk a little bit about that in a few minutes. The deadline to apply under the EU settlement scheme for those that arrive by the 31st of December 2020, that includes the people that are already here, is the 30th of June 2021. Family members can join if the relationship existed before the 31st of December 2020. New immigration system expected from the 1st of January 2021. We move over to the no deal scenario. EU nationals will need to be resident by the 31st of October / exit date. And the reason why we started putting in exit date is because the Prime Minister has applied for an extension, so that exit date may change. It may change to January, it may change a little bit further, but at the moment it's in a no-deal scenario, residents will need to be resident, EU nationals will need to be resident by exit date. Deadline to apply under the EU settlement scheme is the 31st of December 2020. Family members can join if the relationship existed by the 31st of October 2019 / exit date. One of the events I was doing last week, someone decided to tell me in the audience that they were going to amend their online dating profile because there was still hope to get in a relationship before the 31st of October. And then someone reminded said individual that they were a British national, and this applied to European nationals. So that conversation finished there. The person actually got their phone out. I don't know what app they were on, but they thought they should update it. Again, under a no-deal scenario, individuals who arrive from the 1st of November onwards will need to apply for European temporary leave to remain by the 31st of December 2020. Again, I'll go into a little bit more detail on that in a few minutes. New immigration system by 1st of January 2021. Everybody with me? Good. Right, the reason why I've put the next few slides in is because in this chart here, we do talk about election. So there's always the possibility of an election looming. And because of that, I thought I would do a little bit of a snapshot about what each party is currently saying. And you'll understand why I've put Theresa May in there as well, even though Boris Johnson is the current Prime Minister. It's because of the immigration white paper that Theresa May launched in December 2018, which I will talk about at the end. So the Conservative government have said there's a commitment to leave the EU, freedom of movement will end. Boris Johnson wants to introduce an Australian-style points-based system that is currently being consulted on. Theresa May launched her immigration white paper. Home Office civil servants have been doing a lot of work behind the scenes, as well as doing roadshows on how that white paper could be implemented into legislation come January 2021. In contrast, the Labour Party have passed a motion at their party conference, and they have said so far that they will extend free movement, rule out certain forms of immigration systems, not a lot of detail on what they are at the moment, retain immigration controls. And the Lib Dems have said they want to revoke Article 50 and stop Brexit altogether, which obviously for people, that means freedom of movement will continue. Thought it was just important just to take a moment, just if we do enter election territory, what the main parties are saying in relation to immigration, Brexit, and freedom of movement. Okay? Right, back to where we are at the moment. So the EU settlement scheme. Who's heard of the EU settlement scheme? Yes? Anybody been through it? Yes? Has that been a good experience, an okay experience? Some nods? Yeah, fine. Any of you who've been through the EU settlement scheme also have knowledge of the UK visa system? Yes, no? The feedback that we've had is it's a lot simpler, and we've assisted a lot of EU nationals with it. It's a lot simpler system than the UK immigration system is, the EU settlement scheme. Just to throw in something else, I asked this question to an audience about a week ago. One person put I said, anybody been through it? Nobody put their hand up. Anybody's partner been through it? One lady put her hand up and said, and so I said, have they been through the EU settlement scheme? She goes, I don't know and I don't care. So the rest of the presentation was like, if you cared, this is what your partner would need to do. So yeah. What is the EU settlement scheme? So it's the application system designed by the UK government to give EEA nationals and their family members residence in the UK under UK law. As you will all be aware, the EU nationals have previously been able to come to the UK, live, work, study at your institutions quite freely. Some people have lived here 5 years, some people have lived here 10 years, some people have lived here 50 years. They've never had to apply for a document to confirm that they were entitled to remain in the UK. They may have chosen to, but they didn't have to. So the settlement scheme was introduced basically, let's be honest, to document current EU nationals that are in the UK. Who qualifies? EU nationals, Swiss nationals and their family members, and permanent residence card holders, so those individuals that were EU nationals and had been residing in the UK for more than 5 years who decided to get a document to confirm their permanent residency, they will also need to apply under the EU settlement scheme. Okay? Who doesn't need to apply? So Irish nationals don't need to apply, and holders of indefinite leave to remain under the UK immigration rules. So those with permanent residency need to apply. Those with indefinite leave to remain under the UK immigration rules don't need to apply. There's no fee. ID document check app now available on iPhone as of Friday last week. So it was Android phones only, and it's now available on iPhone. I have ditched the Android phone that my firm had given me. I've now downloaded it on the iPhone. So it's now available as of 1:30 on Friday when the Home Office notification came out. I had a colleague who just finished a presentation at midday who was mightily cheesed off that it was now available on iPhone, but it is. And when do applications need to be made by? So at the moment, these dates, as we know them, stand. 30th of June 2021 if there's a deal, 31st of December 2020 if there's no deal. Okay? Two types of EU nationals who are going through this scheme at the moment. So those who've been in the UK less than 5 years, they qualify for pre-settled status. Those that have been in the UK for 5 years plus qualify for settled status. So anyone who makes an application and they've been in the UK for 2 years, they will get pre-settled status. Once they've been here another 3 years, i.e. get to 5, they will then qualify for settled status. Those who've been here more than 5 years should automatically qualify for settled status. One of the things to remember is under immigration rules, 5 years triggers settlement, unless it's one of the new immigration categories, exceptional talent, innovator visas, settlement after 3 years. But in all other categories, it's settlement after 5 years. It's the application process is designed to be very easy, so it can be done through your phone. You scan your documents on your phone, you can take your selfie, everything is uploaded via your phone, and you get a decision quite quickly to say whether you're being considered for pre-settled or settled status. If you have been here for more than 5 years, and the page opens to say you are being considered for pre-settled status, you can click on another button that opens another page that allows you to upload some additional documentation to satisfy the requirement that you should qualify for settled status. All that information can be sent on to the Home Office. Final decision is within 5 working days, but it can take up to a month. So on some complex applications, it's going to take up to a month, but the Home Office, again, as of Friday, said that it's 5 working days for a turnaround time. Those of you that have been through the scheme, 5 working days, less, more? More? More and less. So some less, some more. Okay. And those that have been through it, did you get your email that took you to a link that gave you a PDF letter that confirmed your status? Yes. For non-EU nationals, they will still have a BRP card. Okay? Holders of settled status can be absent from the UK for up to 5 years without losing it, 4 years if you're a Swiss national. That's in contrast to UK immigration law. So if you have got indefinite leave to remain under UK immigration rules, so let's say you are a British national and you married a US national and your US national partner has come to the UK and acquired indefinite leave to remain under the UK immigration rules, well, that individual is subject to the 2-year returning residence rule. So if they are absent from the UK for more than 2 years, they can lose their status, but an EU national under the settlement scheme can be absent for up to 5 years and not lose it. So I was speaking to schools the week before last, and some schools that teach students up to 18 saw that as a good advantage because children could study in the UK up to 18, could maybe go to the EU nationals, could go to the US, do a 4-year degree, still come back to the UK and not have to go through any other immigration visa because they will still retain their settled status. Not quite sure whether it's a marketing ploy, but someone did see that as a marketing ploy. Everybody with me on the EU settlement scheme, yes? Yep. So European Temporary Leave to Remain, Euro TLR. When I came and spoke at Study World in September, early September, we still hadn't had we had just had Priti Patel say via the Sunday Times on the 18th of August, I remember the date because it's my brother's birthday, saying freedom of movement will end on the 31st of October if we leave with no deal. It took about 10 days for the Home Office to put a fact sheet together to say we are going to provide you with more information on what happens in relation to a no-deal Brexit. Eventually, we got Boris Johnson's European Temporary Leave to Remain. Theresa May had European Leave to Remain in a no-deal scenario. Boris Johnson has European Temporary Leave to Remain in a no-deal scenario. So the letters have been changed. We're not going to talk about what Mrs. May's proposal was, as I did at Study World when I came in September. We're going to talk about what Boris Johnson has told us so far. These provisions are actually a little bit more generous than Mrs. May's were. So under no-deal scenario, those arriving between the 1st of November 2019 and the 31st of December 2020, remember that 1st of November date could change if the 31st of October date under a no-deal scenario changes. We have now been told that there will be no changes to border crossing arrangements and individuals can enter with their EU passports or their national ID cards. When the announcement was made by Priti Patel and the media fact sheet was initially released, it only said EU passports. That was very quickly amended to say ID cards as well. I think they were thinking about English UK members. I'd like to think they were thinking specifically about English UK members. And those individuals will need to apply for European temporary leave to remain, which is granted for 36 months. Now, under Mrs. May's proposals, it was you arrive on the 1st of November, you can stay for 3 months, and after 3 months you would need to apply for European leave to remain. Under Boris's proposals, you have up until the 31st of December 2020 to apply for European temporary leave to remain. So effectively, you come in. If you're going to stay beyond the 31st of December 2020, you're not going to make your application for European temporary leave to remain until closer to December 2020 because there's absolutely no need to. You're going to try and get your 36 months for as long as you possibly can. That's the way things stand at the moment. If individuals want to stay beyond the 31st of December 2020, they are going to have to make the application for European temporary leave to remain. So you may have teachers at your schools who don't want to stay beyond that period. You may have students who come in for a longer period than the 6 or 11 months, but are not going to stay beyond 31st of December 2020. They will not need to apply, but those that want to stay will need to make an application. No further information about the application process is yet available. We're hoping that information will be available by the 1st of November. Let's wait and see. There's no fee. The other difference to this arrangement, to what Mrs. May's arrangements were, the period will count towards settlement. So remember, settlement under the most immigration rules in the UK is 5 years. So you get European temporary leave to remain for 3 years. You only need to switch into a different category for another 2 years to qualify for settlement in the UK. So that's another difference under what's being proposed. Has anybody spotted the spelling mistake? It still says Euro LTR when it should say Euro TLR. So we will get that corrected when we send the slides over. Okay, UK nationals travelling to the EU. Under a deal scenario, no changes to travel until the 31st of December 2020 because we expect reciprocal arrangements to be in place. Under a no-deal scenario, rules for travelling and working in the EU are going to change. No visa required for short-term business stays in the Schengen area. Schengen area is 90 days in a 180-day period. Contrast that with the UK. So a US national, for example, can come as a visitor for up to 6 months. Under a no-deal proposal, Schengen area is 90 days. Visa is required if you're going to stay longer than 90 days. Visa is required even if you're going to stay for 2 days and you're going to work and study under a no-deal scenario. So that's what we know at the moment. So individuals will need to check the immigration rules of how many individual countries? 27 in a no-deal scenario and until we have any further information. Okay? Yeah. I think you said something similar about VAT, didn't you? Yeah. Right, so what is the proposed post-Brexit immigration system? So I set the scene earlier on about Boris's Australian-style points-based system versus Mrs. May's immigration white paper. But there's a few things before I go on to those different immigration systems that if we are entering into an end of free movement, that are going to happen in relation to students and to employees. So staff, again, no change for Irish nationals. Employers will need to check a job applicant's right to work in the same way as they do now until the 1st of January 2021. Okay? Employer cannot require an EU national to apply under the settlement scheme. So you cannot make it a requirement. You can't say to individuals, unless you've applied under the EU settlement scheme, don't come back to work next week. You're not allowed to say that as employers because you have a duty not to discriminate against EU nationals. So it's very, very important that not to be sending letters to your staff and to your students saying by this date you must have applied under the EU settlement scheme and we're going to be checking. Students, Irish nationals, again, no change. From the 1st of January 2021, all EU and non-EU national students who do not otherwise have the right to study will need to be sponsored under Tier 4. Okay? EEA students coming to the UK for short-term study will be able to come on the same basis as non-visa nationals. Okay? So those that are coming in for short-term study, as they do at the moment, that is expected to remain the same. Anybody who wants to come in for longer term, Tier 4. If they don't already have the right to be in the UK. So if they're the spouse of an EU national or a spouse of a Brit, they will have the right to be in the UK, but if they're going to come solely for the purposes of study and it doesn't fall under short-term or extended student visitor visas, it's going to come under Tier 4. Okay? And here's just some charts which I have a colleague who loves to do charts, who literally just 5 minutes before I was leaving said, put these into your slides, they'll love them. It basically explains in a chart what I've just said, and it's very handy in relation to no deal. What are the key dates, when you're going to have to do your right to work and right to study checks for those of you who have Tier 4 licenses, and in relation to a deal scenario, that's the situation and your key dates and when you're going to have to check and who you're going to have to check post-Brexit in a deal scenario, okay? We will be sending this information out to you. Right, back to Boris's Australian-style points-based system. And the reason why we're calling it Boris's Australian-style points-based system is because Mrs. May didn't say, well, there was some mention of an Australian-style points-based system, but Boris came out very quickly and said that he wants to have an Australian-style points-based system. And a few characteristics we thought it'd be good to share with you. Applicants ranked for jobs based on education, age, language, work experience. Government considers sector needs and determines who should be admitted. No job offer needed, but this can be used to prioritise applicants. Okay? And as we've heard in the press over the last week or so, plans to give extra points to those who decide to live and work up north. I mean, get your visa and go and live up north and then move to the south. Like, who is checking that? Yeah. Does anyone think an Australian-style points-based system will work in the UK? There's a points-based system. Yes, you're right. Immigration lawyers we shout at the TV and say, we already have a points-based system. What Boris wants is an Australian-style points-based system, which does look at sectors and regions and gives extra points for certain sectors and certain regions. Whereas in the current points-based system, yes, there are extra points for job applicants that are on the shortage occupation list and preferences given, but we're just not a country big enough to sort of delve into all of those regions the way Australia does. But the Migration Advisory Committee have been tasked, again, to look at whether an Australian-style points-based system will work in the UK. And the consultation is closing on the 4th of November, and they have to report back to government by January 2020 on whether an Australian-style points-based system will work in the UK. MAC have previously been asked to look at this over many, many years, and the answer has always been, no, it won't work in the UK. So we'll have to see what happens. Since Boris became Prime Minister, what he has also announced is the graduate visa. So what is that? Post-study work visa. It's the coming back of the post-study work visa. And he also announced a global talent visa. He announced that on Facebook Live and said that that would be operative from autumn. I think we're in autumn, we would all agree. Some changes have been made to the exceptional talent visa, but it hasn't been rebranded to the global talent visa. So announced, not yet happened. Graduate visa announced. We now have a fact sheet on it as well. So that is going to happen. It's going to apply to students who graduate from 2021 onwards, even if they started their course sooner. So that's some positive news. I'm going to contrast that very quickly with Mrs. May's white paper proposals. And the reason why we've kept in Mrs. May's white paper proposals is those of us that have been doing immigration as long as I have think that we're going to be somewhere in between that white paper and an Australian-style points-based system. We think there's going to be characteristics of both. EEA workers should come under Tier 2. However, there's some slides a little bit later on that talk about other routes that EEA workers may be able to come under. But that is the headline proposal, was the headline proposal under the white paper. However, there's going to be a simplified Tier 2 system. How many of you have Tier 2 licenses? Is it simple? Yes? Oh, the only person that said that, actually, in lots of these roadshows. But they want to make it even more simpler, okay? And the way they want to make it more simpler is they want to abolish the annual quota, or the white paper said to abolish the annual quota. So at the moment, we have a quota of 20,700 for Tier 2 workers that are allowed to come into the UK per year. Ending of free movement, we'll see obviously a lot more people needing to use Tier 2, so abolish the annual quota. Under Tier 2, there's also a resident labour market test, so a role has to be advertised unless it's exempt, and advertising is 28 days. Lower the threshold, lower the skill level from RQF level 6 to RQF level 3. At the moment, you can only sponsor graduate level roles under Tier 2. The proposal is to lower that to RQF level 3. A lot of the premise was for employers to be able to hire who they want, when they want, in whatever role they want, potentially whatever salary. I'll caveat that with the 30K that was proposed in the white paper. So to make it a more simplified system. Now, the minimum salary threshold, in the white paper, it was a proposal, 30K. It would be consulted on. Under Boris Johnson, that is also being consulted on, whether 30K would work or not. I went to some meetings and I heard that it would be somewhere between 25 and 30. Maybe we might have an inner London and an outer London salary bracket, not in separate regions, but just inner London and outer London. Debated where Thames Valley would fall under that. The other day I heard 30 to 36, which was a little bit frightening. So that is still being consulted on at the moment. So we yet to see where that actually falls, that minimum salary level. Short-term worker route. So the reason why I said Tier 2 may not be the only route for your employees going forward. So the white paper set out a short-term worker route for individuals from low-risk countries, and EU countries would go under low-risk countries, to be able to come to the UK and work for 12 months at any skill level, not require sponsorship. So let's say you have teachers that come to your organisation and only come for, let's say, 11 months or even 6 months. They would be able to benefit from the short-term worker route. The last Home Office meeting I was at, there was talk under the white paper proposals, I should say, about that short-term worker route being somewhere between 6 to 24 months. And the reason why being somewhere between 6 to 24 months is you have companies like Amazon, Argos, etc., who just need workers over the Christmas period, whereas you have healthcare and hospitality sectors who definitely need people for more than 12 months, because by the time they've trained them, if they leave after 12 months, that period is too short. A lot of those sectors wanted 36 months, but there was talk about choosing somewhere between 6 to 24 months and a cooling off period to reflect the time that you would come in under using the short-term worker route. Couldn't switch in the UK under this proposal, and not allowed to bring in dependents. So if a husband and wife are coming in under the short-term route, both of them would have to come under that route independently and leave after the 12, 24 months, whatever the rules will say on that. Youth mobility scheme. So at the moment, 18 to 30-year-olds under youth mobility scheme. Australia, for example, is a country that Australian nationals can come to the UK and stay for up to 2 years without sponsorship. They can work or they can set up a business. Under the white paper, the proposals were to put in EU countries into the youth mobility scheme. So again, students between 18 to 30, or teachers also between 18 to 30, could come for up to 2 years, work in one of your organisations and not require sponsorship. So the white paper proposal, although talked a lot about Tier 2, did also give some other short-term routes available for those that needed to come in for maybe study for a short period, but more likely teachers that needed to come in and just spend a year teaching at one of your organisations and not too concerned about getting settlement or staying beyond a short period of time.
Hi there, I'm Fergus from Mill Hill. I was just wondering, with the short-term worker route, would that be something that you could only do for 1 year, or could you do it repeatedly year after year?
So in the white paper, what we were told was that you could come in for 12 months and then there would be a 12-month cooling off period. The conversations that I've had, we've been told that there still will be a cooling off period, but if the short-term worker route is 6 months, then there's not going to be a 12-month cooling off period. So it will depend on where we end up with the short-term worker route, but there will be a cooling off period because it should not lead to settlement. So if you came for 12 months, you would have to sit out for 12 months, and then you could come back for another 12 months. Yeah. You could have some people who, let's say you're under 30, you come for 2 years under the youth mobility scheme. You then leave, and then you can come back under the so people can make up time that way. But let's remember that's the white paper proposals that are still being looked at and not part of Boris's Australian-style points-based system at the moment. Yeah. We had a couple of more questions.
Hi, I'm Denise Hopgood. I'm from St Clair's in Oxford. We're an international school. Particularly I'm interested in this as I'm involved in recruitment of teachers. I had a similar question about the repeat workers. So I run a summer school, and very often I'm employing European teachers to come in and work for a very short period of time, sometimes a matter of weeks. I was interested that you said 6 to 24 months being the period. Are those both maximums, not minimums? So
just to repeat again, the white paper says 12 months. What civil servants have been doing is they've been going up and down the country, and they've been gathering feedback from lots of sectors and lots of industry experts on whether the white paper proposals will work or not, and which sectors they will and they won't work for. So lots of sectors have made representations. So to give a few, like the warehouses have said we don't need people for 6 months, for 12 months. We only need them for 6 months, 3 to 6 months over the Christmas period. Healthcare and hospitality have said a minimum of 24 months, ideally 36 months. So some of the things that civil servants have been looking at is whether the short-term route could be a bit like a menu. You choose whether you want to come in for 6 months. The maximum time would be 24 months. But in the white paper, it only says 12 months at the moment.
As a maximum?
As a maximum, yes.
So they could come for any period of time up to a maximum?
Up to a maximum of 12 months,
12 months.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I think there were 2 more questions.
Hi, Karen Bowering from Professionals UK. We organise a lot of unpaid internships on behalf of a lot of members. Typically, someone would come for a 4-month engineering placement, like as an unpaid experience as part of their degree, but they may not be EU, like Erasmus sponsored. They may be coming under private funding. They are not termed a worker. They are a volunteer intern. And they can leave the company as they wish, as they are a volunteer. Where does this fall?
Okay, I'm going to stick with what you said, because you've said that they come as a volunteer. Okay, I think we're always very careful in answering that question, because I always like to look at it from an immigration and an employment point of view. But let's say the individuals are volunteers. Okay, so under the visit rules that we have in the UK at the moment, volunteering is permitted. Okay? If that is work, even if it's unpaid work, then they need to have a work visa. But if it's just volunteering, volunteering is permitted under the normal visit rules. Is that okay?
Is it currently permitted?
It's currently permitted, yes.
Because I understood that you had to have the right to work in the UK.
But you said they were
volunteer. To volunteer.
No, volunteering, there's an exemption depending on how long you're volunteering for. If it's work, then they need to have a work visa. And I can have a more detailed conversation with you about exactly how long they're coming for and exactly what they're doing. But under the visit rules, you are allowed to do volunteering. Yep?
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Do you take one more question? I am going to be around over lunch as well.
I'm Gaurav from Eurospeak Language School. Post-transition period, what would be students' rights? Would they be eligible to work, or would they fall under, can they come under student visitor categories, or would it be just under Tier 4?
So,
would they have any work rights?
So Tier 4 students, if they fall under a sponsor whose students have work rights, they will have work rights, okay? If the sponsor is a higher education provider, and their students will get work rights. If they are coming in to do short-term study, like at the moment, they don't have work rights, they're not going to have work rights.
Okay, so it would be exactly the same as non-visa?
Yes, yeah. That's what we're expecting to happen.
Thank you.
Okay. Like I said, I'm going to be around and I can take some more detailed questions over lunch. Right, so planning. What have we been doing to plan? Anybody want to share? Who signed up to gov.uk email alerts? Good. Yes. You get everything, even firearms updates. You get absolutely everything. But in between, there's some good information. Like suddenly when the app becomes available on the iPhone, it's tucked away under a gov.uk update. And in the slides, when I send the final version of the slides, there are some links on how to sign up to various updates. Very, very important. Right, so sign up to alerts. That's the first thing that we put. Provide information to your staff and students. So who has provided information on Brexit to their staff and students already? Yes? No? Comms are very, very important because, staff and students will be looking to organisations to alert them, to even signpost them to where to get the information. Whether you choose to support staff through the settlement scheme or not, that's a different matter. But it's very, very important to get some comms out to your staff and students just to make sure that they're aware, that you're trying to keep as up to date as possible, and will signpost them to the right information as and when that information becomes available. Keep in contact with your member organisations. So English UK are going to be providing as much information as they possibly can to members, and they will keep that updated, not just on immigration, but also various other developments. Speak to each other. That's also very important. Things that work in your organisation may also work in your organisation, and vice versa. It's not always about what the law says. It's not always about what the lawyers tell you. It's also about what things work in your organisations. You know, what comms have worked in one organisation that you may be able to help another organisation. That's very, very important. Your due diligence, very, very important to know who your staff and your students are. You know, your EU nationals at the moment, you know, they've been coming into the UK, they've been showing their passport or their ID card, you've been noting that down on your system. In January 2021, when we get a new immigration system, you're going to need to make sure then, not before then, you're going to need to make sure that all those individuals that you retain have the right to work, have the right to be at your organisation. Will your staff and students need to apply under the EU settlement scheme? You know, if they do, again, what comms are you directing them to? If there's a no-deal scenario, will they need to apply under European Temporary Leave to Remain? Because again, you're planning for 1st of January 2021 when you're going to make sure that everybody in your organisation has the right to be there. Consider when your next intake of students is. I'm really relieved that I only have to put this as what is your marketing strategy, because you have an expert who's going to come and talk to you about that this afternoon, so that's not my domain. But you will need to consider, you know, what is that marketing strategy? If you are heavily reliant on EU students, are you still going to be attracting the numbers of those EU students come 2021? And if you are very heavily reliant on EU students, what are your contingency plans? Does your school need a Tier 2 or a Tier 4 license? You may not need one now, but think ahead in 2021. Are you going to need a license? And if you are, then those are the sorts of things that you need to start planning now. And thinking about when you put a license in place, how are you going to manage that license, and when's the right time to apply for that license? I'm very quickly going to talk about European health insurance cards and teaching qualifications. I'm going to admit this at the moment. I took this straight from the government's website. I have no insider knowledge. I have no real experience of health cards. You probably know more than I do. But this is the information that is available on gov.uk's Brexit page. So European health insurance cards, issued by an EU country, Norway, Iceland, Liechtenstein, or Switzerland, will still be valid until the day the UK leaves the EU. After Brexit will depend on agreements with individual countries. Students will be allowed to continue to use their cards and access free healthcare if they started their course before exit date, and will continue to apply and be able to use them even if the course ends afterwards. Those covered by citizens' rights agreements, i.e. Norway, Iceland, Liechtenstein, and Switzerland, are not affected. Someone may know more detail about that than I do. That's the information that's available on gov.uk's website. Okay? And European teaching qualifications. So teachers within the EU, EEA, or Swiss teaching qualifications that have already qualified under the QTS will continue to hold their QTS qualification. In the event of no deal, teachers who have applied for the QTS before exit date will be able to continue with their application. And a new system will apply after Brexit, which we don't have any information about just as yet. Okay? As I said, if you have any data protection or GDPR questions, please send them across to English UK. We will get them answered by some of the experts in our firm, and we'll look to get a fact sheet across to English UK as quickly as possible this week. Right. Keep calm and plan for a no-deal Brexit, because that's what we've been told to do. Anything else can just be better. That is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much, everybody. As I said, I will be around. That's my contact details.
Hi, Gary Clark at Bloomsbury International. Just asking about if there's been any whispers about very, very short-term junior visa needs.
Sorry, very, very?
Short-term junior visa needs over the summer and things.
No, nothing more than what we already know at the moment.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, sorry.
Hi Pat, it's
Hello.
Jane, Wimbledon School of English. Thank you, that's a great presentation. I've asked this before. First of all, are we to assume that all EEA nationals will be non-visa nationals? And secondly, are we to assume that the current study visa route, i.e. the 6-month and the 11-month, will apply?
Yes and yes. That's what we assume at the moment. Yeah.
Hi, Simon here from Intuition Languages. One issue we've had recently has been, since the e-passport gates were opened up to Japanese, Koreans, etc., our students have gone through the gates, been told to go through the gates, when in fact they shouldn't because they needed a short-term study visa. In effect, this is a blind eye is being turned to this for the moment because of the nature of the situation. What do you think will happen? Obviously, we're going to have a huge amount more students in this situation who can come through immigration without, interacting with anybody or getting a stamp. It's probably very speculative, but do you anticipate that a blind eye will be turned to EEA students coming through the e-passport gates if they're going to study a course of English, or?
That's what we are being told at the moment. But as immigration lawyers, people that are just coming through the gates is a big concern of ours. And a lot of times we are saying to institutions, can you make sure they actually enter in correctly? We need to make sure that people are only here for the amount of time that they are here. Every time we've asked the Home Office, we've actually had a different answer from them about it. We did ask them again specifically a few days ago. We're waiting for another response. The concern is the future. And the reason why we're always concerned about the future is I think we're all concerned with the Windrush generation. And that's why all lawyers are always concerned about people when they come in the correct way. So we have put the question again to the Home Office. I don't know if English UK, Jane, if anybody's put anything again specifically from an English UK point of view. We've been told, well, as lawyers, we're telling everybody to make sure they enter correctly, but there doesn't seem to be this urgency of getting people to enter in correctly. There just seems to be this, it's okay, they can use the EU gates, it's fine. That's the information we have at the moment. Obviously, we'll try and get some more information as and when we know it.
So Nadia has been sending out regular posts on this and other updates for all English UK members. I've been so many Brexit things, I can't remember which one, but in the last week I was at one where we were told that if they were studying for under 6 weeks, it was okay, but if it was longer than 6 weeks, they had to leave the country and come back in to get that stamp.
Yeah.
So that's really important.
The problem with that is it's not written anywhere.
No.
So we're all just trying to give as much information as we possibly can from the last meeting we attended.
Yes, and we were told at one point that they were going to find a way around this problem, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think they have at the moment. No.
No, I don't think it's priority at the moment.
No.
So it's a case of don't know, like with everything else.
Back about 8 months ago, we had a visit from UKVI, our organisation, to discuss actually employing teachers from abroad. They indicated to us then that for teachers coming for a short period of time, I don't know under which route that was, that there would be a fee of approximately £800 to apply for a visa for the applicant. Do you know anything about that? Does that still stand true?
So the visa fees that we know at the moment are those that are tier 2, yes? We don't know what the visa fees are going to be for the short-term routes. We actually don't even know what the visa fee is going to be for European temporary leave to remain in a no-deal scenario. So, and immigration rules have to go through legislation, so that we need to be told about those in advance. So yeah, I'm not sure where they got the £800 figure for. We know what the fees are for tier 2, but we don't know what the fees are going to be for the other routes.
Hello, Tim Shoburn from Islington Centre for English. Currently, those students who come from outside the EU who are just here on holiday and come in on a tourist visa are then allowed to study up to 6 weeks. Is this likely to be mirrored with the EU students in the future? Do you think?
Yes, I think so.
Can they move on to it? You know?
Yeah, I think so, because all the things that we've been told about what's going to apply for EU, i.e. low-risk countries, youth mobility, etc. So yes, we do expect that to happen.
Okay. Thank you.
Sorry, I should have asked the lady, how was the Home Office visit for you? That's the thing that we always like to ask people. Was it okay? Good.
And it was reassuring, and they did try to sort of approximate how they expected things to go, but this was obviously some time ago before. This is, well, pre-Boris. And I was really interested today by your presentation to see how much had changed, so that was really useful for me.
You hold a Tier 4 licence?
Yes, we do.
I think the reason why I asked how the visit was, and apologies I didn't want to pick on you, is just those of you that don't have a licence and think that you may need to get one in the future, this prospect of holding a licence and Home Office visits can be very, very daunting, because in reality, a few years ago, lots of people were having very them and us visits, back in the day, Home Office officials used to turn up with police officers, Mrs. May wanted everybody to dress in uniform, lots of things have happened over visits, so it's really good and comforting to hear from an organisation who says actually the visit was okay. They gave us a lot of information, because that's very, very important, because there's a lot of scaremongering and there's a lot of sort of, fear about holding a licence, when a lot of you may need to go down that avenue and you may have to hold licences in order to attract the students and the staff that you want in the future. Yep. Did anybody have any more general questions? No? Okay. Like I said, I'll be around for a little bit longer and we will send the slides along. Thank you.